his cinema is about the characters. They are strong, they are survivors, even all the traumas, even all the worst things they went through. They know how to reinvite themselves. They know how to forgive. I love you, Pedro.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we take a cinema legend, take 5 of their films to highlight their excellence and range. My name is Austin Luger.
My name is Eric Martindale.
And we are starting a new 5 today. We are looking at the Spanish auteur Pedro Almodovar. Today we're going to begin with Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. Then we're going to talk about All About My Mother, Talk to Her, Volver, and The Skin I Live In. But first, this is his 1988 film that really kind of put him on a public stage. At this point, he had made a couple of films, none of which I have seen. But this is the one that has been kind of referenced the most from his early part of his career, turned into a not very successful Broadway musical, and I think it's now been inspiration for a British TV show. It is the story of a woman named Peppa who has just been dumped by her boyfriend, who has many other girlfriends. She considers killing herself and then decides revenge is a lot more fun and starts to kind of figure out more about where he is, trying to find him. But meanwhile, one of her best friends is also accidentally involved with a terrorist.
I'm having a ball
trying to watch
you trying to summarize this film.
Yeah, you know. Got terrorists going on. You have cops looking into that. You have a cab driver who keeps popping up places. You have the son of her ex-boyfriend, played by Antonio Banderas, who's with his girlfriend, who he keeps trying to cheat with because he's now in love with Peppa. It is a proper farce, as you can tell from me describing all this.
Wait, he's now in love with Peppa. I thought he ended up loving her friend that was involved with the terrorists.
That's true. Sorry, yes. That was Candela.
Candela.
Yeah. Yes, apologies. I was mixing up my romantic interests.
Well, I mean, it's no surprise, right? I can't talk either. It's no surprise that you're mixing up the plot of this film, because the plot is insane.
It is.
So a couple things that struck me while I was watching this film, and a lot we'll get into, but one of the bigger points I want to make is that this film is very, very much a farce.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to the letter, to the definition. And farces for me don't really work in modern cinema very well. To me, a farce is very, very much a theatrical thing. I mean, like, it kind of works like with Chaplin. Chaplin, the character itself is a farce, and oftentimes the story around him kind of isn't. So there's a blending that sort of happens that I think sort of smooths out those edges. Plus, those movies were made so long ago that they're already kind of theatrical anyway, so I kind of give those a pass. But you think of, like, plays that became movies like Noises Off. I mean, Noises Off is, like, one of the most famous farces of all time. And it's a very, very funny play, and it's not a very funny movie, and it's the same exact script, because for whatever reason, while theater may be, when you're in the theater, it might have a feeling of more real, but it is a more heightening thing. It's more heightened. The senses are more heightened, and we're more forgiving of things that couldn't really happen in real life because we understand we're watching a live event. This movie has all of those things in it, except for it is a movie. And because of that, the comedic timing and the way things sort of flip back and the way the swerves sort of happen in the farce, they don't work for me as much in transitions because you can edit them to a T. What makes a farce so funny on stage is because we know that the timing has to be perfect, and we're laughing at the timing so much as we're laughing at what's actually happening on the stage. This, to me, it felt like the farce, but I just didn't get the laughs from me because it's so over the top that it just doesn't feel realistic, which is a ridiculous thing to sort of levy at a thing trying to be a farce anyway. But I can't help but think that way when it's a movie. So part of it is just simply how I'm programmed. And if you're confused on kind of what I'm getting at, go back and listen to the way Austin tried to break down the plot. This movie, how long is this movie? It's an hour and 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit under.
A little bit under an hour and 30 minutes, and he just said 5 billion plot threads. And that's because all of it's happening, if you can't read snap, and it's all happening like this, and it's all happening now, it's going very quickly, and that's where the humor is supposed to come from. It's just that it probably... they shouldn't have turned it into a musical. Should have just made it into a straight play.
Yeah.
And I probably would have been more interested in that.
And I think that, I mean, as we're going to go through these films, Pedro Almodovar has such a unique style. I mean, he's someone who's very inspired by melodramas we'll get to next week. But he kind of goes for a realism and then a heightened elements kind of blended together.
Sure.
You get these moments that are very kind of humanistic and understanding. I look at the moment that's like the perfect combination where she's in the midst of deciding to kind of kill herself. She's put poison into gazpacho.
Mm-hmm.
I can't pronounce that word.
Gazpacho.
But then she
essentially just like a tomato juice cocktail.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's that gross soup that's always supposed to be cold.
Yeah.
But eventually she accidentally sets the bed on fire. At that moment, that is a very kind of heightened thing. It's part of the farce. But also as she looks into this really tall fire that's on the bed at this point, you get just a nice close-up of her, and you get this moment where it's really kind of up to interpretation. I took it a bit as, like, because you always get Pedro Almodovar, grew up in a very kind of Catholic environment. He himself isn't very religious, but as I saw her looking into the fire, I couldn't help but think about, like, looking at, like, the nature of hell, but also the idea of fire being inspiration for revenge is a more satisfying thing. But you get, like, these just a few seconds of her staring at his face, and she's crying, looking at the fire. That is such a human moment, as opposed to a few scenes later, we're going to have her friend, the top of the landfill, trying to, like, hide her phone because she's now accidentally involved with terrorists. You kind of get both of those in this movie, and I think it helps with me for the farce element because it is a movie first.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Most farces, you'll have it be within, like, the same day. This takes place over a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to have the characters have time to consider their actions and then make either more reasonable or crazier choices makes it feel more like, especially with also so many different locations.
Well, I think that helps. I do. And I think the beats when they're happening are funny. Mm-hmm. If not because they're just so freaking outlandish.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that moment with Peppa where Peppa has these moments where she's often working as sort of like, I mean, she has crazy shit happening to her too, but she works sort of as this character where we as an audience have a lens into this world through and I'm going to bring it up again because it's the most famous farce ever, but like in Noises Off, Lloyd is the director, and we have Lloyd, who's grounded in sort of the reality of our reality. He's actually in the audience to start the play off. So looking into this crazy play he's trying to direct, that's kind of the lens we have here. So with Peppa, you have these moments where the other characters don't get, which are these very, very real and sort of grounded moments to humanize her, because it's funnier if Peppa is actually a real character and this is just a crazy circumstance. It's one, because it makes it funnier, and two, it actually makes it believable.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't have one character like that, it might as well be a cartoon. Mm-hmm. So,
and it's just a fun kind of element. You kind of watch all of these women who have been scorned in some way or another, and this is one of the very first roles for Antonio Banderas. I love his performance in this because you basically never really get to see the man who started all this. You see him on film because they're involved. Peppa and him are involved in the film industry. They both do voiceovers for melodramatic film. And they're doing a Joan Crawford film at the beginning. And to have Antonio Banderas be a kind of ally for them, but also immediately falls into the same bad habits as his father, as he keeps trying to make out with Candela while his fiancée is accidentally poisoned on the patio.
Yeah, which I think works. So that's an incredible prop. Like, I mean, if you can just think
Chekhov's
about it. Exactly. If you can just, it's kind of like Chekhov's gun, because if you have, okay, so Chekhov's gun, I assume most people listening probably know, but in case you don't, it says that if there's a gun hanging on the wall in the first act, by the end of the play, it must absolutely go off. If it's not going to go off, it shouldn't be hanging there. So we have a poisons drug cocktail. We have a drug cocktail that was made so Peppa could commit suicide at the beginning of the film. This prop is around in and about the place the whole film. And it works as great dramatic irony because the audience understands that it's a drug cocktail, and we're waiting for someone to drink it. And the first person it does is Banderas' girlfriend when they come over to look at the apartment. And so she is a prop then after that because she's passed out the entire film. Yeah. For the most part.
and only until the last few minutes of the movie when she essentially is woken up from this rough day.
Yeah.
And then she actually begins to immediately bond with Peppa because at the very beginning when she first arrives, she's very kind of one note, very dismissive.
She sees her as like a sexual rival.
Well, that too. And also just like being mad that like the house they were told is empty is not.
Yeah.
But then like they start to connect at the end as they both have now been scorned by both generations of this family. It's the same guys. And that is such a fun thing going on. And I did take notes for this one just because so much happens in this movie. But this movie in one way reminded me of Wes Anderson's first film, Bottle Rocket. Nothing in terms of the plot or anything like that, but in terms of like this is someone who is soon about to have complete control of the frame and complete control of like every color on the frame. It always like looks like an Almodovar film, and this is him like right under that budget. And yet he's still able to do so many different things. And I started to catch on during the movie that each character has an assigned color for what they're wearing. It's a very like major color. Peppa is red, Candela is wearing blue, and
it's funny because I haven't watched the movie in 3 months now, but I remember what the characters were wearing almost better than what I remember the plot.
Yeah.
To be frank. Yeah.
And it's because they make these kind of iconic outfits, and it would be very easy just to kind of have them be like, cartoon characters. They don't tend to change their outfits. Homer, Marge, and Lisa and Bart are all wearing the same thing because it's just their assigned attire, basically. But instead, like you have each one of the people being their own colors, but then when they start to like team up and kind of change their motivations, they also switch colors. Like for like half the movie, Candela is really asking Peppa like, I'm really in some bad stuff right now. Peppa's like, oh, I know, I got a lot worse right now. Until she eventually drops the ball like, no, the police are after me because I've accidentally been with a terrorist.
Yes. I'm accidentally aiding and abetting with a terrorist plot. Yes.
And for one moment, Peppa decides to pause her own journey. Then she puts on a blue coat and gets inside a phone booth to start to kind of move that information around. Then she stops wearing the blue coat, goes back to her journey. I'm sure there is probably additional fun about like what each color represents thematically. I was able to track like, and sometimes then when you would have characters team up, their colors would blend together. And it just became a really fun, like this is what you're able to have. Yeah.
This type of thing works for me when it's not so obvious. And oddly, I don't think it is here.
No.
Even though I'm like I said earlier, I'm aware that all the characters are wearing a certain thing and are assigned a certain color. It didn't distract for me.
Right.
Like I'm trying to The Sixth Sense. Okay, we get it. Red.
Yeah,
we get red.
Red's bad.
Red is bad. Like we get it. Red is ever. That's a good movie, but like red, red. Like I don't know what the theming there is. Just that red is bad. But you're absolutely right. Each character has a thing that they're assigned for. I don't know what it means thematically either. I'm not really sure it even matters.
No, it's just kind of a really fun thing that kind of adds to.
It's just a uniform and
it's recognizing that there is this heightened atmosphere. Like this is not a normal weekend for any person on the planet. So when you get to have like, I think with even my notes within the phone box when she's making the call, it is purple inside. So red and blue together, right? That makes purple. I wasn't like, as for copy, I wasn't sure. At one point during the movie, because my third time watching, I actually pulled out a color wheel just to make sure I was right about what colors are being combined.
I know you're right about that because Hillary Clinton wore the purple jacket in her concession speech for that reason.
Oh, really?
Because it's red and blue together.
Interesting.
Yeah. At least that was theorized.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
of all the headlines that week, for some reason I remember that one.
What else happened that week? Whatever. We'll look at that later. But to me, like, it's a movie I really like. I enjoyed the energy of it. I think it moves really fast. I don't always laugh a lot, just because I actually am just swept up and liking the characters and liking what they're doing. But there is one character who's only there for comedy, who I think is hilarious, which is this cab driver. Do you remember him? He's essentially Uber before Uber, because when he just is always, whenever she has to hail a cab, it's always this guy.
Yeah.
And what's his name? He doesn't have a full name. He only likes to play, I think, mambo music. So it's just like the mambo cab
that's
driver.
right.
And when he walks in, it's like, oh, what do you want? I got magazines here. I got mints. I got all this kind of stuff here. I've been in those Uber drivers. They want those 5-star ratings.
Yeah, I know.
He's supposed to make the best experience possible.
Yeah, this is a time before those ratings existed.
And he's just, he's loving it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the crazy new lover for, what's the guy's name? The guy,
the dude?
Yeah. Whatever, I don't know. The guy that...
It's hysterical, I don't have that one thing in my notes.
Yeah, well, and that guy, his name is mentioned like 100 billion times in the movie, but whoever Antonio Banderas' dad is, who's the one that Pepper wants to get with, his new lover is totally played up for comedy.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's remember, like, this movie ends in an airport with a gun getting pulled out and fired, if I'm not mistaken. So,
88 was a different time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's true, too, but also, like... you wouldn't expect that to be the ending to this film. No. So.
When the ending is when it's allowed to go full farce. Once, like, they have the things in place, that's when the cops show up in the apartment. Mm-hmm. And their plan is basically to try to poison the cops. Not to kill them, but just to get them to be asleep so they can go chase after the mad woman in pink on the bicycle.
That's right.
Who has the gun, trying to go off that way. Yeah, and the Scorned guy, his colors are always black and white because he's first seen in a soap opera film, which looks like Federico Fellini's 8.5. Like, he's depicted as the main, like, Fellini protagonist, like Dulce Vita, like, he is the coolest guy in the world. Cut to, everyone hates him.
So, I'm curious if you know this. Do you know when the musical came out? Do you know when it was?
It was honestly a couple of years ago.
I was going to say,
meant to
how
listen.
long ago was it?
Pat LaPone was in it.
Yeah. The reason why I say that is because I actually heard of this movie first because of the musical.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was actually aware of the musical before it was a movie.
I know it did not get very good reviews, and I think if it even, like, made it to Broadway, it lasted for like a half second.
Yeah, I don't. That has to be why. Maybe not. I mean,
But was it a deal that, like, Pat LaPone was doing this?
It's not like I haven't heard of Almodovar, but I just, for whatever reason, I feel like I associated this particular film with the play.
It's also like it hit that moment, like, and like it was a hit here in America. It was up for the Oscar and lost, but it has just one of those titles that just kind of always appears in pop culture. Yeah. Like, I'm sure there is a Simpsons parody title. Like,
I see what you're saying.
Like,
the title's incredible.
Yeah. And like, it has just like certain, like, for whatever it was, like this time period, like certain indie films, like every TV sitcom writer watched, like this and My Dinner with Andre, get way more attention in American sitcoms than they should.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's really true. Yeah.
And I think maybe because this is one of his most, like, accessible films and silliest, that it's able to do that.
To me, it oozed a farce. It is a farce. You even have the grounded Lloyd type of character that's in there, and Peppa. This type of thing just works better to me and on the stage, because timing is artificial in a film. Mm-hmm. So, and that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. It's just that I think in this I'm more just sitting there and watching it as opposed to, like, and absorbing it rather than just probably splitting my side laughing at it, which I probably would on stage.
I think he has funnier films. Like, I actually do believe I laugh more in the next film, even though it's a much sadder film and a much more different film.
It's kind of weird because the next film I wouldn't call a comedy, but I probably did laugh more.
Yeah.
And I know I know that it is officially, like, considered a comedy. But...
Which is a choice.
Yeah, that's really weird to me.
But, yeah, definitely would recommend this film, if only because, like, you get to see where Almodovar starts and just a kind of brilliant characterization with lots of illness. So, that is Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. We'll be back next week where we're going to talk about All About My Mother, his Oscar-winning film. Until then, you can leave us your thoughts on this film and other films at thearttomorrow.com. Leave us a review on iTunes so people can find our show. Follow us on Twitter at the Immortals Pod. Special thanks to Adam Lord for his awesome music for every episode. And while you're at thearttomorrow.com, check out the other podcasts, including The Immortals. We were off this week because we had a lot of scheduling madness, but our last episode was last week we reviewed the film Dr. Zhivago and listened to some Brian Eno and watched Quantum Leap. Also got Ad Absurdum, where two lawyers talk about real-life legal implications and pop culture. Where else can we find you?
Constant Aversion is my YouTube channel, and I'm thinking about getting a Twitter.
Oh, man.
I know.
Set the world on fire.
I know. I'm one of the last 31-year-old holdouts.
That's true. 31-year-old podcaster.
The 31-year-old podcaster that doesn't have a Twitter. I will not let you find me.
But stay tuned if he does it.
Yeah.
And once he does,
it's possible.
Not going to tell you what it is.
Exactly.
Because you definitely can't.
And then I will block you.
Perfect. We're going to get so many more listeners that way.
I know. It's true.
Well, until next time, I'm Austin Bigger.
I'm Eric Martindale.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Pero lo fingí, me creyeron. Solo matándole conseguiré olvidarle. ¿Y cómo piensas hacerlo? Iré al aeropuerto. El aeropuerto está tomado por la policía. Ya les has oído. No importa, me las arreglaré. Y ahora que lo sabes todo, bebamos.